Saying yes to life. Do you say yes to life? Or do you say no? When someone asks you to do something, do you always say no? When someone asks you to go somewhere to do something that you're not really sure if you want to do, I know I've done it. I think of the reasons why I shouldn't go or why I can't go. I have a routine. You either have success habits or failure habits. I'm not saying you should say yes every time someone asks you to do something. Obviously, that's not congruent with success. But how many times when you could do something different, excuse me, and you don't do it? Because you stop and think of all the reasons why you don't want to, why you have your routine, why you don't want to break this certain habit. Sometimes you just need to step out of your habits. You need to step out of your comfort zone, because even success habits can become a comfort zone. And comfort zones can lead to death. Death of your inspiration, death of imagination. And now I'm a firm believer in planning and sticking to your regimen. I have a certain thing I do every day. Every morning I get up and I have a routine I go through. I usually get up about 2 hours before I leave here for work. And when I get home from work, I come to my room, I shut the door, and the request is that everyone leaves me alone for a half an hour at least, so I can unwind and contemplate my day and relax a little bit. I have a routine there also. So those are just two of the routines I have every day, and I have many others. Well, Thursday, my son wanted me to go with him. He wanted the family to go to Hannibal and do the haunted ghost tour. I had done it before, probably 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. I really didn't want to do it, but it was important to him. And I have a meeting on Friday night I go to at 7:30, so I knew I would have to check out of that. And I opened the meeting up, so I have the key to the building. I said, well, I'll go if I can get someone to take the meeting. So I asked an associate of mine if he would open up, and he said he would. So I went. I really didn't want to go, but I ended up having a good time. Now that broke my regular routine, because I have a daily routine for pretty well every day of the week. And these are routines, or you could call them success habits, planning that I have. Sometimes if we stick too rigorously to our plans, our mind becomes stagnant because we don't experience anything new or different. And a stagnant mind cannot come up with creative ideas. And ideas are worth, well, let's just say ideas are valuable instead of saying they're worth money. Money is just a symbol of value. In its essence, it represents service, value, prosperity, wealth. But in itself, it's not worth anything. It's just paper. People used to trade with cows, sheep, goats. Be kind of rough if you wanted to go buy a car and you had to take 1,000 goats with you. So when you think about your life, think about breaking out of your normal routine. Do something you wouldn't normally do that breaks your routine. Now, you don't want to do this every day. You don't want to develop failure habits or negate your success habits. But you need to experience different things so you can think different thoughts. Everything emanates from your thinking. Your dominant thinking will determine your dominant actions, and your action will determine the results you have in your life, whether that be success or failure, and whatever that means to you. Success to you is more than likely not the same thing success is to me. For me, true success is having the trappings that I desire, but yet having peace of mind and contentment, and having things, but those things not having me. When I lived in Latin America, there was a certain amount of time, 6 months or a year, when I started my English school. And I had a very minimal existence. I walked sometimes 10 or 12 miles a day, and I taught English for $1 an hour before I had the school, before I had a building, before I rented a building. That was one of the happiest times in my life. I had nothing. We slept on a concrete floor with a 6-inch foam mattress right on the concrete. I cooked on a hot plate. We had 3 rooms and a tin wall surrounding our yard. If you've ever been to Latin America, you know what I'm talking about. If not, the houses are set up, and then your property is usually surrounded by a 3 or 4 foot high tin wall, horizontally placed, sometimes higher. And your neighbors are right next to you. It's like squares. So we had that, and we had the bathroom, the shower stall, the toilet stall, and another room. So there were 2 rooms there, and a cornstalk kitchen. And I wasn't much for cooking on open fire. So this was definitely out of my comfort zone and out of my routine of living. But the 6 years I lived there, I would not trade that experience for anything, because it widened my horizons. It made me grateful for what I have, for what I have here in the U.S. I used to travel back and forth from down there, not during the 6 years that I was gone, but at other times. And I would fly back into St. Louis, and contrary to when I thought St. Louis was very dangerous, when I would land back in St. Louis, I would feel the safety, the comfort, the cleanliness as compared to Latin America. As where when I was younger, I would go to St. Louis and I thought it was dangerous and dirty and cold, and it was frightening. But I don't look at it that way now, because I know something different. I know how safe and clean and great it is here in the cities in the U.S. compared to third world countries where poverty is rampant and you can't leave anything out or it will get stolen. Many people talk about rich people being crooks. I think that's more out of envy or jealousy. But I'll guarantee you, you're much safer in a rich neighborhood than you are in a neighborhood or a country of poverty. You would be amazed. But if you've never been out of the U.S., you don't know any different. So you have no contrasting experience or situation to make it relative to what you're used to. So for me, in that situation, it helped me to be grateful and appreciative for what I have today. I never appreciated a washer and a dryer. Why should I? I grew up with that. A stove, I always had one, a refrigerator. But many times in Latin America, for months, I didn't have any of these utilities, these conveniences that we have up here. We grow up with these things and we feel entitled. We never think that many, if not most of the people in the world don't have these things. A car, I didn't have a car. I never had a car down there. I did eventually buy a motorcycle. I took the bus. They call them chicken buses. For a long time, I walked, as I said, 10 or 12 miles a day, teaching English for $1 an hour. Now you say, well, you can buy a lot more for $1 down there than you can here. Well, not where I shopped, because I bought the American type food. If you go to the markets, you can. And yes, my wife at the time, of course we're divorced now, my wife at the time would go to the market and make the money stretch. She did a really good job of doing that. And that was when I would say we were poor. But to those people there, we were doing pretty well, really. I was getting about $600 a month from some money I had here in the States. As where most people in the neighborhood we lived in were probably doing well if they got $100 a month. But of course the rent, I think the rent I was paying was $100 a month. And we did have water, running water. But if you ever get a chance, if you can go travel out of the country and try to stay, don't stay in the tourist spot. Go to where the people, the real people live, I'll say that, not the tourist areas. Go to the real part of the country, how most of the country lives. It will be an experience that will enrich your life. It will make you appreciate what you have here in the U.S. Because whatever you appreciate and whatever you're grateful for grows. So many people sit around and complain about this or about that. No, I don't have a new car. I don't have this. I don't have that. Both my cars are paid for. They're not new. I've had exotic sports cars, 2 of them. And that's cool. And I've had some nice, the American sports cars. I've had some of those. But now I just got a little, I don't know what it is. It's a Ford Focus or something like that. It's paid for, and I have a van I use for work. I've had it a long time. It runs great. It's kind of like an old friend. Sure, I could get a new van or I could buy a neat car. But what's the point? I have no one to impress. And these vehicles serve me well, and I don't have a payment on them. There's a saying that I read out of a very wise book. It says, the borrower is a slave to the lender. Think about that. The borrower, if you borrow money, you are a slave to the lender. And how many people in the U.S. today are enslaved with debt? Now, debt is good if you're investing or if you're using that money to make more money, or if what you are paying on is increasing in value. There's nothing wrong with that, but so many people have credit card debt and they want that new car so they can be somebody, or the 2 Escalades in the driveway and the big fancy house. And there's nothing wrong with these things, but if you're just working every day and all week just to make the payments, and you're thinking about the bills that come in, and if you were off work 1 week and it would cost you greatly, you may lose everything, you might want to reevaluate your life. But that's off the subject. Back to getting out of your comfort zone, breaking your habit. Sometimes we make our life so that we're in such a habit of making our payments. We've restricted ourselves. We've enslaved ourselves, because if we don't go to work every day, if we don't do this certain thing, we will not be able to make these payments. And thus, if you think about it, there it is. The borrower is the slave. I can get up right now and go anywhere in the world I wanted to go. In my business, I could have my son Henry, who I'm grooming to take over. He could run the business. It would be challenging for him, definitely out of his comfort zone, but we do that a little bit at a time. I'll leave him on a job, or I'll let him finish up a job. And it increases his stress level. It gets him out of his comfort zone. It breaks his normal routine, which is me making all the decisions. All these things help you grow. When you say yes to something you're not sure if you want to do, you have a different experience, because you break out of that habitual, daily, we'll call it a grind. Some people look at it like that. I don't think it's a grind, even though last week was a challenging week for me. But as I told you guys before, if you have goals, you want to achieve your goals, you have to grow in character and integrity. And the only way that you can do that is to be challenged by life, where you could shortcut. You could hinge a little bit on this or on that and not quite do what you're supposed to do. But what I found out in those situations is I do what I do as if I'm doing it for God, not for the people. So when I find myself in a bind sometimes, wanting to get done quickly or just get out of there, I'll do something extra. Not for the people, but it's actually for myself, for my higher self, for the God within me, for the God of the universe. I sometimes don't like to use that word because people think of religion. And I'm not talking about religion. You can use any word you desire for God. Actually, I don't know how many different names there are for God. People have used throughout the centuries. 95% of the people in the world believe that there is some kind of a God. That's 95%. Now let's say they're all wrong. So what if they are? If it enhances your life, if it helps you, if when everything goes to hell and nothing's working right and you depend on this God, which some people say maybe it's a fairy tale or they don't believe, what's the harm? If it works, why not continue to use it? And if you see it working in other people's lives, why not try it? What keeps us from trying it? Pride and ego. I want to do it myself. There was a time in my life when I said, if you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself. Well, guess what? I created or stepped into that reality. Every time I had someone else do something, instead of doing it myself, they would screw it up. Now I realize to be truly successful, I'm just a servant. I serve my clients, I serve my employees, and I'm in the middle. And from that, I gain freedom and more monetary success by being more of a servant than when I was just by myself. When I was just by myself, I just served the client. But now I serve my employees and the client. Service is the key to greatness. Whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Now, that doesn't mean you can't talk well about yourself. If you're good at what you do, say it. It doesn't matter. Are you a good technician? I'm one of the best, you could say. That's not me, but am I a good contractor? I'm one of the best because I care about my clients, I care about the quality of my product, and I always do my best. Although some days I don't feel like it's my best. But what you feel like and what it is two different things. Sometimes my best is not good enough for certain clients. There are some people I can't please. It's rare, but it happens. But then I have to take a look at myself. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had this guy match some paint for me, and it just wasn't quite what I thought it ought to be. So I had the boys take it back there, and he just couldn't get it. He changed it a little bit, but he couldn't get it any closer. Sometimes I try to make things perfect, and I stopped and thought about that. I had 2 or 3 extremely difficult, challenging OCD, even clients. One of them's mother said that her son suffered from OCD, and I was doing his house. And I was having a hard time pleasing them. And I thought to myself, now, you're doing similar to what these clients were doing with you. So he did the best he could on the paint, and I asked him, he said, yeah, that's the best I can do. And then later on that day, I thought, now how would I want to be treated? He did his best, and it was close. Wasn't perfect. And usually you can't get it perfect. So I called him up and said, hey, that paint was good enough. It looks great on there. I said, I didn't want him worrying about it. So I let him know that it was good. Because if I spot people that I think are really overboard about wanting something done perfectly, more than likely I do that myself in other areas of my life. So I got to always be watchful. If something bothers me or I'm having difficulty with a person, a client, or anybody, an organization, I have to ask myself, do I do this in certain areas of my life? Maybe with my family, maybe with someone else. Because as the old saying goes, you spot it, you got it. I'm going to stop there because I'm getting way off topic. But Thanks for joining me. Share this with a friend if you think it will help them. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.